Today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup, UW-Madison edition. Campus protesters are demanding the chancellor expel a student for making racist comments. Meanwhile, Republican Assembly Speaker Robin Vos is threatening to cut funding for the university's diversity programs. And do UW police horses get better benefits than UW employees? Saddle up. The whole CityCast Madison team is here, including Bianca Martin and Molly Stentz. It's Friday, May 5th. I'm Dylan Brogan, and here's what Madison's talking about. It's the Great Friday Roundup, where we corral this week's news in convenient podcast form. CityCast Madison Marshall and lead producers here, Molly Stentz. Hello, Molly.
Hey, Dylan.
And Bianca, back on the ranch. How you doing? Do you have a nice time off?
I did. It was very restorative.
Yay!
The news this week will snap you back into reality.
Oh, no.
I'm always in reality,
Well,
though.
that's true. Reality was kind of ugly this week, and we're focusing on UW-Madison because that's just where all the news, the big top news stories seem to be coming out of. And of course, we have to mention that extremely disturbing and racist video that was posted on social media by a student that has prompted protests.
Indeed, there have been hundreds of UW-Madison students protesting this week on the UW campus. There was a video from a UW student who was saying pretty violent and racist comments about Black folks. It's been circulating since Monday. It's now a national story. And there's been a mass call to have the alleged student be expelled, including a change.org petition with over 40,000 signatures. It's pretty bad, the video. UW condemned it, but they said they're a public institution that respects the First Amendment, which protects her right to say very offensive and hateful things. There are a lot of students that disagree with that, and students brought a list of demands to the chancellor, including expelling the sophomore.
And so we should say not exactly what's in the video, but we should, for anyone who hasn't heard or seen this video, you hear a woman's voice and she's using racial slurs and she's talking about wishing people would die.
Yeah. I mean, you see her, she's crying. She had been broken up with someone who was Black, a Black student, and she's crying and she says, not to say everything, but basically she wants to send people back into slavery so she can have them pick cotton for her and die and hope that their bodies dry out from all the cotton that they pick. So it's not a new tale, obviously. I don't know. It's pretty upsetting, but it's not surprising to me. It's like one of the number one things that you hear about is just the idea that Black folks' bodies are up for grabs and to be of use to other people.
It kind of was almost a hot mic situation. Like, she wasn't posting it as like, this is a threat, but it was almost like somebody captured this video of her ranting, maybe to a friend, kind of just expressing these vile, disgusting opinions, maybe to a group of friends. Yeah. And just making light of, race-based violence. So that's the context.
I mean, she was making a threat, but not a threat to anyone in specific. It was a threat to Black people. She was just like, I hope this happens.
She mentions the specific people in the sense that she mentioned something about people who have wronged her. There's no defense of it. And what got me thinking about is how UW is a unique government institution in that it can banish people. Isn't that what expelling a student means? It's saying you are no longer welcome in this community. You are banished. So that has some rules attached to it about when you could do that. That's a very powerful tool that the university can use. And the rules in which they can use it are defined mostly by state law.
When we say banish, it's almost like getting fired, right? Because we're not talking about criminal action. We're not talking about anyone being put in jail. We're talking about you're getting fired from the privilege of being a student, which you've applied to be, and you've gone through a rigorous selective admissions process in which, a team at UW-Madison decided, yes, we want you to be a student here, and you getting a spot means numerous other people who applied are not getting a spot because we're giving it to you. It would be the university basically firing her as a student. That would be the outcome. She could no longer take classes.
Yeah, like it's a privilege to be there. This is like the gem of our state, the best and the brightest. And how I assume, UW-Madison, they have a code of conduct. And I just wonder, it doesn't extend to this, but in this day and age, like, I guess thinking about like what is hate speech, and like if it's not happening on campus, but it ends up on social media, like, I mean, there are plenty of people, like you said, Molly, who get fired because later they find out someone they're not representing their values, they're in their daily life. And like, I don't know, it's it's sticky.
You know what doesn't seem like justice to me is that, okay, there are a lot of people who want something that seems like kind of, makes sense. You can see why people are protesting and why it really doesn't seem like much of a demand for her to be expelled. That's what people want her to do. All right, and 2 years later, she wins a First Amendment lawsuit and gets a huge settlement because her First Amendment rights were violated. Doesn't the university have to consider that option too? And then there's just the practical level. The student's not coming back. I don't care if she's expelled or not. Like, you think the student's coming back next semester?
I don't know. And I'm not necessarily... I think it's really important to listen to the students who have been hurt and harmed by this language and feel unsafe. Like, we're hearing students come out and say, I don't feel safe here. Like, this person's making threatening speech about wanting... people like me to die of thirst and to work for them. And like UW-Madison's Dean of Students office received around 1,000 hate and bias reports just as of Wednesday of this week around the issue. They're not happy with the response. I don't think that the student is going to be expelled, but it's yet to be seen.
The way in which this is portrayed almost feels insidious, right? Because it's like, oh, is this really what people think? It's like reality TV. It's like getting this window into somebody's brain and into somebody's thought, like private thoughts that maybe, they wouldn't stand up in Library Mall and say this, to a crowd of their peers, but it's this perhaps honest expression of how they really feel. And that is disgusting. And I think also shocks a lot of people that like, actually, maybe people do harbor these racist attitudes more than they're willing to admit or own up to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I remember on campus in 2011, there was like a mock lynching that happened on LinkedIn. Like, it was of a doll that was put up and like hung. And I remember just the feeling that brought to me here on campus, but it really just reminded me of growing up in Baraboo, where there were constant people dressed up in blackface. There was a row of cars that they called Hick Row that had Confederate flags, and people would say things about lynching and whatever in class.
At the high school,
and you guys might remember there was a photo taken, I forget when, of like all of these junior boys doing the Nazi salute. And that became national, international news. And it wasn't on school grounds. And it's that same thing, like the shocking sort of like, is this really what they think? And then you start playing armchair psychologist, like, these are a bunch of juniors. Like, did they really mean that? And blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, there's still an impact of like what's acceptable here. Like, what's intent versus impact, I think, has to be considered. And it would be, maybe unfortunate for this girl if she didn't mean to say these things, that she, her life has really changed by it. But it is a lesson to be learned that your words have power. You shouldn't make threats. I don't know.
You do know.
I do know, yeah. It's definitely a tough cookie.
Before we round up any more news, let's take a quick break. Bianca's got news about the weekend.
Have you been to the Muskie Lounge and Sporting Club yet? Well, It's over on Monona Drive in what can only be described as Madison's hottest strip mall. It's got the classic staples of any great Wisconsin tavern: illuminated beer signs, taxidermied fish, of course, cold beers, and fancy cocktails, 'cause America. And yes, it is named after one of the stars of fly fishing, the musky lunge. So Northwoods flannel enthusiasts, your Valhalla awaits. They also have mad parlor games with popular leagues for things like shuffleboard. The Muskie Lounge and Sporting Club stays poppin'. So if you want in on the fun, go check it out for yourself. Oh, and if you see a tall, dark, bearded man behind the bar named Jerry, he was once a lumberjack and is really nostalgic for when folks yell out timber. It's spring cleaning time, y'all, and let's talk about organizing your finances. Attorney Z. Usman with Usman Law has helped thousands of folks fight back against abusive debt collectors, and he wants to help you get your financial house in order. First up, your debt. Create a list of everyone you owe money to. Start with any debts that are tied to property, like mortgages and car loans. Because if you don't make your payments, the lender can seize your property. Nobody's got time for that. And pro tip, sometimes your debts are tied to each other, and you may not even know it. Do you have a car loan and a credit card with the same credit union? It's likely you can't pay off one without the other. But there's help. To learn the easiest way to pay things off, visit madtownlawyer.com to schedule a free call with attorney Usman.
So meanwhile, while all this is happening, up at the state capitol this week, you may be thinking, well, who else is talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, our state lawmakers are, and they're talking about deleting it from the university system budget. So we know it's state budget time, where all state agencies are going up to the Capitol and asking for their next 2 years worth of state funding, including the UW system. And what came out this week is that Assembly Speaker Robin Vos has floated the idea of just cutting all those programs out of UW. So this is about $13 million or so out of their budget, which is like $7 billion, 200 people or so that work for the system, of 35,000 employees. And these people are the ones who support students on campus and staff on campus, try to create community on campus. They organize events to support their Black students, to support and recognize Native students, to support women and LGBT students, people that any group that by definition is a minority, is a small number on campus and is facing threats and in need of support. So that's what these folks do. They offer workshops, they offer training, they organize public events, they help recruit faculty of color, try to diversify the workforce, make sure there's equal opportunities. So that's potentially on the chopping block.
See, I think this is all a bunch of just Voss playing to his Republican base.
Wait, are you saying politics comes into the state budget? Quelle surprise!
This is a bargaining chip, it's like a chip of a chip off the bargaining chip. Robin Voss, he can grandstand about how he doesn't like DEI initiatives at UW, but he's essentially saying, well, I'm going to take it out of your budget. But the budget is so huge, it's like instead of giving UW $100, he's saying, well, if you don't do what I want to do, I'm only going to give you $99.999. So UW is basically telling him to pound sand.
It's still pretty disturbing in light of the story that we just got off of, which is, who's out there with students and trying to calm the situation down? DEI staff, people who are put there to work and be support for having a diverse campus. Like, it's wild. I, benefited from having support from a number of diversity, equity, and inclusion like programs and things that were literally just like targeted to keep students of color in. Like, for freshmen in particular, that's a lot of times, like for freshmen, the students of color, like from marginalized groups, that is the first year they're probably going to like drop out of college. And so there are programs to support students to stay. And it's just like building community. When you're a minority, like you want to, you might not know how to show up in someone else's culture. If you're not the dominant culture, you might feel like you don't know how to speak up in class or ask for questions or ask for help. And you don't want to, maybe you don't want to look stupid or whatever because you don't know the cultural norms. And I found that these programs are really, really important.
Well, isn't it interesting some of the demands that the students are making over that video is to reevaluate they're not saying get rid of it, but they're asking UW-Madison to reevaluate its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives because are they working?
Well, to do more, not to do less.
Well, they're not saying get rid of it, but they just say reevaluate, and that seems like maybe this is what the students are asking the chancellor to do.
Are they working? Are they enough? What is it?
Well, they're also asking, like, you could basically fund tuition for a large number of students on campus. I mean, that was a pretty concrete demand I heard at the silent sit-in, which wasn't silent, but which was very, very powerful. So, yeah, just because the legislature wants something done doesn't mean UW will do it. No. Obviously, they have federal pots of money. They have private sources of money. But is it being used as a bargaining chip right now? Yeah, it seems to be. We know that the state budget is a moving target. Votes are being taken. The governor has a strong veto, but we'll see. We'll see where this ends up. But, in other UW news, they certainly don't horse around when it comes to their police department.
Oh, funny.
That was for you, Dylan.
Tone Madison.
King of bad puns.
Yeah, Tone Madison did just what I thought was a super clever way of talking about an important issue. And the headline is, at UW-Madison, a horse gets better parental leave than humans. So one of the UW police department's horse cops, they bring out, we just saw him at Mifflin, got pregnant and welcomed a little baby horse into the world. And UW police posted on their social media that, the mom horse and the baby horse are doing fine and that the mom will be getting 12 weeks leave to care for her foal. And so as this Tone Madison article points out, that is 12 weeks off for parental leave, essentially, is not a benefit that a lot of UW employees have, but this horse cop does.
Whose lives matter? Horse lives.
Nay.
Obviously, it's hard to compare it completely it's hard to compare oats to oats here but it is, the horse cop is somewhat of an employee and is getting taken care of by the university. But UW has been talking about this a long time. They've had reports about how they're one of the only big public university that doesn't have an official parental leave program. People can take time off after they have a kid by using their vacation or sick days, but this is about a specific paid parental leave. And UW-Madison doesn't have that officially as... It's
true. And I used to work there. I was a UW employee, and people certainly asked for it. People certainly wanted it and needed it. FMLA, as we know, gives you 12 weeks off and protects your job, but it does not pay you. It only makes it's so that you can literally not show up to work for those weeks and still have a job at the other end. So you can use your paid time off, your vacation, your sick days, but there's not a separate actual policy that paid. Although there would have been in the state budget. Tony Evers was proposing it, right? He was saying basically like, yes, we should have 12 weeks. We should join the rest of the modern industrial nations and offer some kind of paid sick leave. But that was actually stripped out of the budget this week by lawmakers.
They've done some committees and work groups about what the best thing should be done. And it's basically to offer at least 6 weeks of paid parental leave. That's what Dane County does and the city of Madison does. But those programs only started a few years ago. So like you said, Molly, basically the rest of the world lets parents have some time off after they have a kid. And quite frankly, that's why I like this story, is that this horse cop, it needs to be around its little foal for a while, right? In order for the foal to grow up and be healthy.
It's a foal.
We assume that.
It's a foal.
Just like without any question.
Just roll straight
We
through
assume
that.
that just seems obvious when you're thinking about it.
A foul.
It's not a duck.
Technical foul.
It's not a
Technical
duck.
foul.
Yes, it is. F-O-A-L. A foal. A foal?
It's a foal, but okay.
Well, now I got to start over.
Keep going.
I thought it was pronounced foul. It's foal?
Yeah, fowl is like F-O-W-L. That's like a duck.
I didn't know.
Well, this became about me not saying the word foal right. That sounds like a foul's better. A little foul.
A foul. I think that's another quacky. Quack. It's like a duck.
Oh my god.
I think there's a lot of homonyms here. Anyway, we're just treating a horse. We assume of course the horse should be with its baby horse.
What's the hardest part of horseback riding? The ground.
Oh.
We had to get the dad joke in there.
I have to admit, I am really excited for this horse, this mother, and their new baby. And hopefully, when people hear this, they'll feel a little like spark in their heart to allow that for other mothers of different species, like ours.
Well, thank you, Bianca. You summed that up a lot better than I did.
No horsing around. That was a good joke, Mal.
You know what else you missed this week, Bianca?
We wanted to let you know, just in case you didn't hear about it, there is a bear apparently just wandering around Madison.
Is it a dancing bear? I need bear. I always think they're like going to be on skates or something because they're always depicted in art, like dancing and like on.
Were you a deadhead?
This is a Wisconsin bear. It didn't escape from a Russian zoo or circus. We're looking for people who have seen the bear.
I haven't seen the bear, but I might go look for it.
Well, if anyone has seen the bear, please let us know about it. We want to hear from you. Madison at citycast.fm.
Hey, the sun is out and, horses, lambs, alpacas, bears, everybody's coming out of hibernation. And it's Cinco de Mayo, so maybe people are going to come out tonight to the Majestic. Because there's a freaking 15-piece orchestra playing there tonight, which sounds really cool. Orchestra Salsol de Mad.
I love it. A good orchestra.
Molly Stentz, I might see you there. Bianca Martin, you have a good weekend.
You too.
That's an order.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. Bianca Martin is your host. We're produced by Molly Stentz and me, Dylan Brogan. Music is by Carl Christensen. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox from our friends at Madison Minutes. And have you been missing your minutes? Don't worry, Haley is back on Monday. If you enjoyed today's show, why not tell a neighbor about us? We're trying to build a cult following here. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. See you then. Goodbye. I hate the end part.